The Oasis Live 25 reunion tour has just come to an end. So today I wanted to talk you guys through the tour, sharing some of the highlights, a few moments you might have missed, and just to speculate a little on what might be coming next for Oasis. The Live 25 tour was announced in August 2024, and chaos and pandemonium ensued as one person in every 5 in the UK tried to get tickets. The actual tour itself, however, didn't start until around 10 months later, in early July 2025. The opening night was in Cardiff on the 4th of July. And when asked why they chose to start the tour there in Cardiff in Wales, Liam explained on X, simply, because Cardiff is the bollocks. And here is the tour setlist, all 24 songs. I was actually lucky enough to be there on opening night. That was the concert that I went to. It was immense and it was emotional. In the setlist, of course, was Oasis classic Live Forever. And when they reached this point in the set at Cardiff, they paid tribute to recently deceased footballer Diogo Jota during the outro. And this would be the first of several memorial moments in that song throughout the tour. By all accounts, opening night was a triumph, an incredible electric concert, and a BBC reporter who was there wrote this: "I have seen Oasis many times, and this was the best they've been since 1995, when I caught them supporting REM at Ireland's Slane Castle as they limbered up for the release of Morning Glory. Back then, the Manchester band blew the headliners away, instantly making them seem dated and irrelevant, in a show that threatened to turn into chaos after Liam threatened a fan who'd thrown a projectile on stage. They might not have that sense of danger in 2025, but there was a hunger and a passion that was missing from their last shows in 2009. After the gig, the band released Slide Away live in Cardiff on Spotify and YouTube, and of course they were in Cardiff the next night as well, on the 5th. And then it was 5 days off before their hometown run in Manchester, for 4 nights at Heaton Park during a heatwave. On the first night, the 11th, the Gallagher kids were all there along with Pep Guardiola, and Richard Ashcroft of The Verve admitted to the crowd that he was missing his wedding anniversary to be there to play support at the gig. And as Oasis fever gripped the city, as a celebration of Manchester culture during the time of the Heaton Park shows, supermarket Aldi also renamed some of its stores in the area Alde, in tribute to the Manc dialect, after rival supermarket Lidl had put up a blue plaque the year before, following Liam Gallagher's promise to play there if the Co-op Live venue wasn't ready in time. While the Cardiff gigs had the thrill and excitement of being the first time the band had played live since their split, the Manchester gigs nonetheless did have something which Cardiff lacked, and that was fireworks, because the roof was closed in Cardiff, but Heaton Park was open air. And at this gig, Noel Gallagher dedicated the song Half the World Away to comedienne Caroline Aherne, who is sadly no longer with us.
We'll make it fucking big one day. This next one's for Caroline and Craig.
At Manchester, loads of people turned up without tickets, and some managed to find spots from which they could watch and hear the gig, albeit from a bit of a distance, for free. Aware of this, Liam went on to dedicate a song to them, and the area got given the nickname Gallagher Hill. And from these gigs, Oasis released the song Cigarettes and Alcohol, live from Manchester, on July the 11th. Next up, however, it was the big one, Wembley Stadium, London, where apparently a bunch of bloody Cockney chancers managed to smuggle in up to 200 people, charging them for entry through a disabled entrance using forged wristbands to get into the VIP area. It was also at Wembley that, allegedly, the events happened that caused Liam to stop throwing out his percussion instruments at the end of gigs. The NME pointed to a story on X that 2 men had mobbed a female fan and snatched the maracas from her. And it seems that, as well as one fan catching a set of maracas with her head, resulted in the Oasis management telling Liam he couldn't throw them out anymore. But the gigs were a storming success, and in his 5-star review, James Hall wrote this: "In a mesmerising return to London after 16 years away, the Gallaghers prove that rock and roll is the art form we need right now." And during their time at Wembley, Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne was honoured and featured in the Live Forever tribute slot, with Liam Gallagher also dedicating Rock and Roll Star to his memory. On the second night at Wembley, there was also, sadly, a heartbreaking moment where a man fell to his death. Lee Claydon of Bournemouth was later confirmed to have fallen foul of a tragic accident, and the band sent their sincere condolences to his family and friends. And from the Wembley gigs, Oasis released the song Little by Little live from London on August the 2nd. Next up, it was north of the border to Scotland, where Oasis played 3 nights at Murrayfield Stadium in Edinburgh. In Scotland, there had been some controversy from a pretty nasty Edinburgh Council safety report, which described Oasis fans as fat, leery, drunk and old, literally in an official safety briefing, which is of course incredibly professional. Liam hit back on X saying, "To the Edinburgh Council, I've heard what you said about Oasis fans, and quite frankly, your attitude fucking stinks. I'd leave town that day if I was any of you lot." He then added, "I'd love to see a picture of all the people on the Edinburgh Council. Bet there's some real stunning individuals." And here's a selection of very unimpressed clips from Liam at Edinburgh on different nights.
Absolutely stunning. Them fuckers in the council must be blind. Get to them slags later though. £3 billion we brought into this city over the last 5 days. You and us, £3 billion quid. You won't see all, sell Robin, and split it between all their posh ugly mates. Still waiting for an apology. Bring it on down, you Edinburgh City Council.
£4 billion fucking pound.
And, of course, it having been the song they used each night to retaliate against the council, Oasis released the song Bring It On Down live from Edinburgh on August the 9th. And also, the Edinburgh gigs apparently set a new record, beating Taylor Swift for the concert that literally shook the earth the most. After Edinburgh, it was over to Dublin for 2 nights at Croke Park on the 16th and 17th of August. And in the Belfast Times, Niall McGreevy wrote, "I was too young to see Oasis the first time around, but after the Croke Park gig, I could have died happily. Much has been joked about before the start of the tour on the Gallaghers potentially locking heads again, but that couldn't be further from the truth. They looked as though they relished the occasion, walked out onto stage together holding each other's hands raised to the sky. Liam fist bumped his older brother as he walked off for his break, and the two hugged while fireworks erupted above them." And he's right about the fear amongst Oasis fans of a potential fallout. That was at least part of the reason that I went for tickets on opening night. I had to see them before there was a dust-up. But, thankfully, that moment never came. Billboard wrote this of the Dublin gigs. In their first run, Oasis often ended setlists with a cover. The band's most recent Irish gig before this weekend closed with its rendition of the Beatles' I Am the Walrus. But the Gallaghers don't need to honour their classic rock idols so explicitly anymore. They unquestionably are now such heroes themselves. Throughout the Live 25 era, the Gallaghers have been pretty withdrawn from the press, saying virtually nothing. But after Dublin, Noel gave an interview to Talk Sport.
How are you? Are you good? Are you well? Are you enjoying life at the moment?
Yeah, top of the world. Couldn't be any better.
Out of all the gigs you've done so far, are you stunned at just how well it's been received so far?
Yeah, completely blown away. Everyone is. Every night is the crowd's first night, do you know what I mean? So every night's got that kind of same energy to it, but it's been truly amazing. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me personally, I grossly underestimated what I was getting into. I don't mind telling you, my legs had turned to jelly after about halfway through the second song, and I could have done with going back and taking a minute, but it's great being back in the band with Liam. I forgot how funny he was. Liam's smashing it. Yeah, I'm proud of him. I kind of look around and I think, good for you, mate. He's been amazing.
One last question, then we'll move on to football. Lots of talk about the end of this tour, it not being the end. Knebworth's been mentioned. What's your view on when the tour stops?
Right, let's talk about football.
Okay, fine.
And the final live song to be released from the tour was from Dublin. It was Wonderwall, live on the 16th of August. And following this release up to the time of filming, that's it so far for live renditions from the tour. And so, with the UK and Ireland leg of the tour done, the band headed across the Atlantic to Canada. On the 24th and the 25th of August, they played Rogers Stadium in Toronto, Canada. And while there, they played open air on a rainy, storm-drenched night. It was one of the rainiest gigs of the tour so far, with a constant downpour throughout the set. One fan reacted to the weather conditions on X, writing, "Something very poetic about Oasis bringing their fuck-ass British weather to Toronto amidst our most heatwave summer." As Noel took to the stage for Talk Tonight and Half the World Away, dark clouds rolled in, and by Stand By Me, the skies opened. Rain and wind whipped across the stadium, drenching the crowd and band alike. Liam, soaked but grinning, addressed the storm.
It's only a bit of rain, man. Don't you just love it? A little bit of chaos when the weather comes. Weather's so fucking good, innit? It's fucking twisted, man. It's just a little bit, innit? All that sunshine, it's not good for you. Wind and sleet.
Far from dispersing, the rain seemed to electrify the night. By the time the final notes faded, fans left drenched, hoarse and deliriously happy. Oasis had proven that not only are they back, they're bigger than ever. And, as another fan on X put it, you've never lived until you've sung Live Forever in the pouring rain. Then it was down south into the US, where they played their Today 16 Years Ago gig at Soldier Field in Chicago. And while this gig was just a good gig, it's also a very significant one in Oasis lore because of the date it fell on. And if you'd like to know more about that one, you can check out my video on the Today 16 Years Ago mystery next. The link for that is also in the description. Chicago went well, and Billboard reported this. It was clear American fans have studied the tapes from the group's UK and Irish gigs last month and came prepared to do their part. And boy did they. From the unending sea of Adidas stripes on tracksuits, football jerseys and sneakers, to what must have been a Midwest record for the most bucket hats in a single place at once, the crowd came to sing along and hoover up as much merch as possible. And of course they did the turnaround and jump up and down Poznan dance during cigarettes and alcohol, making the ground shake like a Britpop earthquake. It seemed apparent with this short run of live dates in the US that Oasis had finally done what they'd worked so hard for in the 90s. They had finally cracked America. And, bit by bit, the American press started to recognise this. This is what Rolling Stone said. The response to the whole of Oasis's catalogue, as well as the remarkable amount of 20-somethings in the crowd, made the case that the band has grown a whole new fan base across the Atlantic. 31 years since they first performed in the US, the Gallaghers can still break America. Or maybe, in Chicago, they already did. Next up after Chicago, it was the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Looking back on their previous struggles in America back in the 90s, Liam Gallagher said,
Yes, no, we love coming here. It's fucking beautiful. But what we didn't like is being told by Dickies and record companies saying, you gotta play the game, kids, or you'll be chopped liver. You gotta kiss some ass or you'll be chopped liver. Well, I can stand here tonight in front of you beautiful people in this magnificent stadium and tell you, you don't have to play the fucking game. Bring it on down.
Oasis singer Liam Gallagher dedicated the song Live Forever to the victims of the August the 28th school mass shooting in Minneapolis at the band's August 31st concert at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford. I want to dedicate this next tune to the kiddies of Minneapolis. Live forever, Gallagher said. But then, after New Jersey, we came to possibly the most significant and star-studded Oasis gigs in the American leg of this tour. Their 2 live shows in LA, in California, at the Rose Bowl. Paul McCartney was in attendance, he was seen filming the set from the back, and he gave the show a one-word review. Fabulous. But McCartney was far from the only celebrity in attendance. Apparently Leonardo DiCaprio was there, so was Kristen Stewart, Billie Eilish, James Hetfield and Mark Zuckerberg, among many others.
It was incredible. It was incredible to see them back together again. And Paul McCartney was actually there, and I think they sang a Beatles song, and the whole sort of stadium looked back at Paul and clap for Paul too, which was awesome. It was a great tip of the hat. So it was a special night.
Here's an article in The Guardian from American journalist Matthew Cantor. After a crowd of nearly 90,000 finished singing Don't Look Back in Anger, Oasis frontman Liam Gallagher had a question. Are we dating? He asked fans at the Rose Bowl, a stadium just outside Los Angeles, last Sunday night. America, Oasis, the hot new couple, yeah? If the Gallagher brothers and the United States are going steady, it comes after 3 decades of a turbulent, on-again, off-again relationship. But as the band finished the US leg of their long-awaited reunion tour last weekend, it was clear Oasis has finally taken over America. In the days leading up to the 2 sold-out shows, it felt like the entire city was obsessed. Coffee shops and bars were full of people in Oasis t-shirts, bucket hats and little round sunglasses. On social media feeds, there was an abundance of memes about newly minted Anglophiles, and joke t-shirts saying, "I made it home from Oasis at the Rose Bowl." A headline in Variety read, "How Oasis turned LA into glorious Britannia for a weekend." Perhaps the most interesting attendee, however, for those of us who follow Oasis lore, was Melissa Lim, who posted to her Instagram and was in the audience while Noel sang several of the songs he wrote about his time with her back in the 90s in San Francisco. What happened over those 30 years that transformed the American perception of Oasis from merely a successful band into genuine rock icons? The music writer Lizzie Goodman points to the Gallagher brothers' unfiltered, brash personas, a balm for Gen Zers who have grown up in a world where everyone, everywhere is afraid of saying or posting or retweeting the wrong thing. Meanwhile, the passage of time has proven that the songs are timeless, and the band is a reminder of a more innocent, obnoxious, fun time when the world didn't feel so trapped in fear. That might explain the sense of overflowing joy at the Rose Bowl last weekend. At a time when every day seems to bring new horror and more brutal division, it offered a rare chance to embrace camaraderie. The US tour began with something akin to a threat from the band. America, Oasis is coming. You have one last chance to prove that you loved us all along. Maybe we finally have. Interestingly as well, on their Thank You LA video, they released a previously unheard version of the Hindu Times, just a snippet. Just as they've recently released 5 new semi-acoustic versions of tunes from the Morning Glory era on the What's the Story Morning Glory 30th anniversary, this was a tiny moment of a semi-acoustic Hindu Times. It was just a small snippet, but it sounds bloody great. And then it was further south for the 12th and 13th of September in Mexico City. And it was at these gigs that younger brother Liam sent fans into a frenzy when he closed the gig by telling the crowd, "We'll see you again soon." Tragically, a few days after the Mexico shows, Mancunian boxing champ and friend of the band Ricky Hatton would be found dead at his home in Manchester. Hatton was close to both Gallaghers and had been for years. They'd even walked him into the ring. The song Live Forever would also be played at his funeral. Now, Oasis were meant to have a decent chunk of time off after the North American leg, but they decided to put 2 more Wembley Stadium dates in, on the 27th and 28th of September in London. And this time, of course, it was Ricky who occupied the memorial slot during Live Forever. And at Wembley, just as he did in Mexico City, Liam repeated his hints that after this tour, it probably still isn't over.
Champagne Supernova, see you next year.
And a few days later, they got name-dropped at Labour conference by Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
This country of boundless creativity, of culture, history, music, art and sporting brilliance, of world-class educators, of fearless entrepreneurs, the grit of the Lionesses, the swagger of Oasis, the strength of the Red Roses, the beauty that stretches all the way from the south down to the Shetland Islands.
The band then had a few more weeks off before heading to South Korea. They had one gig in Seoul, South Korea, and at this point, guitarist Bonehead had to step back from touring just for that leg due to a prostate cancer diagnosis. And he was replaced on stage by a cardboard cutout of himself and by Mike Moore from Liam's solo band. and they moved on next to 2 nights at the Tokyo Dome in Japan. But the day before they were due to play, this happened. A Labour peer raised the possibility of Oasis returning to Knebworth for a series of concerts next summer, before rowing back on her claims.
Next July, I'll have the benefit of 5 days of Oasis concerts in the fantastic venue at Knebworth House, which is just about a mile away from my house.
However, Baroness Taylor subsequently clarified her position, telling the BBC, "I was speaking hypothetically, following speculation that they would play Knebworth again. I understand the band have not confirmed this." Get saving, lads and lasses, ladies and gentlemen. I expect the demand for tickets will be absolutely idiotic once again. And I also expect that Oasis reclaiming the Knebworth crown from Robbie Williams is happening. On the 25th and the 26th of October, Oasis played the Tokyo Dome in Japan. And the Japanese Times said this: "Last weekend, Tokyo looked a little more like Manchester. If you were wandering through the wet, windswept city, you might have noticed a curious number of people sporting Manchester City football shirts, Union Jack flags draped across their shoulders, and wearing bucket hats and tinted glasses, because Oasis was finally back in town." Next up was 3 dates in Australia, and Oasis have a hilarious history in Australia, causing general carnage everywhere they went on their first visit, back in the 90s, on the Be Here Now tour. There was a bit of controversy at the first night after a fan threw a lit flare into the audience during Champagne Supernova, and Liam let his feelings be known afterwards on X. To the massive who launched that flare into the crowd last night at the gig in Melbourne, you are one seriously fucked up individual, and you will get yours, trust me. The remaining Australian dates, however, passed without incidents, and after Australia, it was off to South America for the final 5 dates of the tour. On the 15th and 16th of November, Oasis played live somewhere that apparently is quite special to the band: Argentina.
No, is there a particular stadium or arena that you're about to play at that you're really looking forward to?
The River Plate Stadium in Buenos Aires.
Wow.
And we played there a couple of times, and the Argentinians are without doubt in the top 5 places for us to play in the world, and it's the furthest away from Ireland and Manchester. But yeah, everybody is looking forward to the River Plate because it's a special place for us.
And Liam kept dropping hints in the run-up. On November the 12th, this exchange happened. On X, Megan asked, "Are you sad that the tour is ending soon?" And Liam replied, "I'm not actually, as I know things you don't know." In Buenos Aires, Diego Maradona was honoured in the Live Forever memorial slot. The famous footballer who the boys had met back in the 90s on the Be Here Now tour in person, and who, allegedly, had threatened to have them both shot. On the 19th of November, they played in Santiago, Chile, a gig about which I could find virtually no information whatsoever, so I assume it was just a solid gig that went by without a hitch. And then it was on to the final 2 dates, literally just last week at the time of filming, on the 22nd and 23rd of November, in Brazil. But on the day after the Chile gig and 2 days before the first Sao Paulo gig in Brazil, Manny, bass player for the Stone Roses, tragically passed away in Manchester. For those who don't know, without the Stone Roses, there would have been no Oasis. It was at a Stone Roses gig that Liam Gallagher discovered his inspiration to want to be in a band. And at the final gigs in Brazil, the band also paid a massive tribute to one of their musical heroes. At the end of the gig, Liam handed over his maracas and tambourine to Noel, and the monumental globe-spanning monster that was Oasis Live 25 came to a close. And of course, Liam once again closed the show by saying, "See you soon." But of course, that brings us on now to the question on everybody's lips: what's next? I've talked on the channel several times about my belief that there is a new Oasis album in the works. And following that clearly accidental announcement from a member of the House of Lords about Knebworth, I think there's just no question it's on. At the end of the tour, Oasis posted this on their X. And so it came to pass. The most damaging pop cultural force in recent British history found its way into the hearts and minds of a new generation. From Gallagher Hill to the River Plate, from Croke Park on the banks of the Royal Canal to the City of Angels, the love, joy, tears and euphoria will never be forgotten. There will now be a pause for a period of reflection. Oasis. And that reference at the beginning of that tweet is to a highly offensive article written by British journalist Simon Price in 2024 as a profoundly negative reaction to the news of the Oasis reunion. I had wondered if Oasis would make any response to it, but it turns out the music was enough the whole time. All they needed to do was quote his awful article and then point to the joyous reality. Of course, this just being a broad overview, I can't cover everything or anywhere close to everything. So let me know anything else that seemed important or that stood out to you that I missed down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. And as always, a massive thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. And if you would like to be credited at the end of videos, if you would like access to exclusive bonus content, to my ad-free archive, and my guitar course, How to Play Guitar Fast, the link to that is also in the description, and hopefully I'll see you inside.